We are saying it is true that, right?
Yes.
This is your stance, which means you are validating.
Validating.
And having said that, you need to pick a side. You are not just playing find and find. You base everything on the knowledge that you possess. You are saying it's true that Lenin's economic policy was a compromise with capitalism to save communist rule in Russia. And I'm saying if you validate, you need to give us a first account, which is a reason. Your first account needs to be because you are saying
it is true.
If you are saying it is false, that basically means your first account should be
Negative.
negative, right? So let us look at this in context. You are saying it is true that the Lenin's economic policy was a compromise with capitalism to save communism in Russia. You need to give us a reason. You are going to say because, for an example, you are going to say because the NEP transformed agriculture and led to a production of surplus food after allowing people to own things privately, as stipulated in capitalism. However, unemployment grew with dismissal of surplus workers. Exactly. This is one conjoining word that you need to familiarize yourself with and how to use it. When you are giving us a positive account, your conjoining word to show that, okay, this is a positive and this is a negative. It's you using
however,
or any other term that you can best find that will show me that you are now going to go against the account that you just gave. And in this instance, we are saying it is true that the new economic policy was a compromise with capitalism to save communist rule in Russia. Because another example would be extremes of poverty and wealth were reduced, as stipulated in the capitalistic approach of an ideology. However, the road and transport remained. That's what it says. So in this instance, that's you giving me two accounts, a positive and a negative. And then you continue to give us your orientation. The orientation will remain the same. This essay will discuss how Lenin's new economic policy was a compromise with capitalism to save communist rule in Russia, using examples like agriculture growing or the emergence of wealthy peasants who are known as kulaks. Full stop.
So, sir, is it important to rely on the question whenever on the stance and on the orientation?
It's very important that you do it or you revert back to the question because that keeps you grounded. It keeps you in line with the argument. You are not going to therefore start talking about things that have nothing to do with the given statement. When you keep reverting back to the statement or the question that you are given, it's so as to sustain your argument, not to find it now talking about many facets that have nothing to do with the question. So when you know the question and what it mainly requires of you to do, you are mainly going to be specific to what the question mainly wants you to say. You are not going to keep on beating around the bush. So when you keep repeating the statement, it's where you are trying to see to it that you sustain the line of argument.
So
Yes.
in our introduction, the stance is okay, and then the reason you give a positive and then a negative if you validate it. You
Yes.
say it's true. So after I write my orientation and I'm writing the rest of my essay, because I agree, I am writing all the positive things of the NEP. But why do I have a negative reason? Do I have to write at the end of my essay? Do I have to mention unemployment?
Exactly. You do talk of it in the manner in which you are expected to do it. Because your accounts, like we did say, you are going to have an essay, right? And this is your intro. And your intro is balanced. There's a positive end. And then you are going to have your first body paragraph. Say you are going to have, for space sake, say this is your introduction and this is your first body, this is your second, and this is your third. Say for example, this is
The conclusion.
the conclusion. Your account needs to be balanced in this manner. You are going to talk about and then yeah, you need to give us.
Negative.
That's why we are talking of a balanced account. The question says critically discuss, which means look at both the positives and the negatives. When you are critiquing something, you look at both facets, the good and the bad, the positives and the negatives. So in this instance, when they are saying critically discuss, it means look at everything holistically. Do not only focus on one side, unlike when you agree. You are looking at one side and supporting yourself as to why you agree. When you say to a greater extent, you are looking at that extent at which we are mainly talking off and all about. In this instance, the expectation is when they say critically discuss, you give us both the positive and the negative accounts. You are not going to mix and juggle them. You are not going to say positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative. No. You talk first of the positives. And then at the end, it's where you're going to say a negative. Why? Because your introduction is the one that says it is true, which means the first thing that I need to see as part of your reasoning itself, you gave me a positive. If we are invalidating, it's other way around. It means it's going to be negative, negative, and then positive. Are we together?
Yes.
So when you are critically discussing, your sequence of content needs to be very, very coherent, such that when you speak of the positives at the top, you continue talking about them. Let us use this as an example. This says the impact of the NEP. We are going to talk about, say for example, paragraph 1 talks about agriculture. Your point will be the NEP transformed agriculture and led to a production of surplus food. That's your point. That is your point. Prove it. Give us evidence, give us an explanation, and then link it to the next one, which will be tied to extremes of poverty and wealth being reduced. This is your point. Give us an explanation and evidence and link it to the next paragraph, which will be about the emergence of wealthy peasants. Do you get me?
Yes.
This is the flow. After that, if this is your point, give us evidence, explain and link, and then move forward. Give us another one which talks about the emergence of private traders. Make it make sense. It's a point. Give us explanation, evidence, and link it to the next one. And then you give us that which you refer to as the Russian economy improved. This is you talking about the positives that are tied to the NEP. Right? We are still talking of those positive reasons, which means positive, positive, positive. Once you get here, you are done talking about positives. You are then going to go back to that statement that you used at the very top that says, however. When you say however, that will be your point itself, because we are now going to say, however, unemployment grew with dismissal of surplus workers. That's your point in that paragraph. Explain it, give it evidence, and link it to the next one, which will talk about the road and transport remaining poor. And then if you have any other point that is tied to the negatives that are due to the NEP, you are also going to write them under the negatives. And then after that, you are done. You sum up your conclusion, or you sum up your argument by saying in conclusion, or by saying therefore, or whatever it is that you can show us that this is now the conclusion. By therefore saying in conclusion, this essay has proved how Lenin's new economic policy was a compromise with capitalism. That saved communist rule, because even after Lenin was dead and the NEP was removed, communism still continued to exist in the society of Russia under the leadership of the new guy, which is Stalin. You are done. Are there any questions?
No, sir.
If you do not answer, or sorry, if you do not have, or if we are asking questions right now, even though it's 3 of us, see to it that you use your peers. It's very important that in class, even when you do not understand, you use your peers.